So our next guest, Brian, why don't you
Is
introduce?
Roland, and he has a company called Scaleup Ally, and he helps tech companies that are starting up stay on the right path. Not because as entrepreneurs, as we all know, it's hard in the beginning. You know, who do you hire? Where do you hire? Do you outsource? Do you do different things?
Yeah.
And he kind of helps folks kind of stay on the right path because there's a lot of tech startups that fail pretty quickly if they get out in the weeds.
So he's joining us from San Francisco,
Yes,
I
San
believe, right?
Francisco.
So,
That's right.
hey, Roland, how are you? There you
Hi,
are.
how are
Yes.
you guys?
Hey.
Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you. Give us a kind of the 300 or the 3,000 foot view of Scale Up Ally.
Yeah, so there's a lot of attention for helping startups get started, turn an idea into an initial company. But what I notice is that a lot of companies, even after they reach initial traction, they get something running, they kind of hit it, if you will. After that, they often still fail. People assume that after they've hit it, then everything will go well. They just keep growing.
Mm-hmm.
But I found that about 99% of them fail over the years, fail to reach additional rounds, fail to get to a good exit. And so I got really passionate about understanding why is this happening and what can I do to help these folks.
So, hey, and could you pronounce your last name for us? This is Tim.
Yeah, it's Roland Siebelink.
Siebelink.
Oh, we had that
so
right.
we were right. We just didn't want to
did
mess
have
it
it
up.
right.
You didn't want to say anything
Perfectly right.
bad.
What are they? Because we always hear this about startups. People want to think, oh, we're going to have the ping pong table and we're going to have the beer at 4 o'clock and all that stuff that's going on in out in the
Right.
valley there. What do you find? Is there a consistent thing that over and over again you seem to find that these companies keep coming up against?
Yeah, so I would say the root cause is really that the way you run an initial startup, like the small team, household sized, 5 to 10 people, is very, very different from how you need to run a company when it's reached 100 or 200 or 300 people. And so it's really about the founders starting to realize that their role needs to change. They can stay in charge, they can stay the CEO, but not if they insist on doing things the same way. And so what is hard for people to realize is that the very things that made you strong in the beginning, for example, being quite detailed about how you manage the customer experience, in a way kind of micromanaging things, is really good in the beginning, but not when you're 100 or 200 people. So how do you turn these things that made you strong into things you can now actually give up and replace with new strengths?
You know, Roland, that I'm fascinated by what you do and your observation specifically in creating this business to help startups and small companies achieve greater goals. I owned 2 previous ad agencies, and I will tell you that looking backward now, of course, hindsight is the best thing in the world.
Isn't it always?
I realized that any gift that I brought to that might have been my ability to do storytelling, advertising and storytelling on a certain level, but all the nuance of managing people, of dealing with cash flow, of office, of politics, of hiring and firing. And it's in one of the write-ups that you have, it was one of those things you said was, if you looked back 3 years into the company's formation, would you hire the same people again? Things
yeah.
evolve and change. So I guess my question is this. To start a company requires quite a headstrong personality. And those are the people you're really dealing with, aren't you?
Yeah.
Oh, I am,
They're the folks that
absolutely. And traditionally, especially here in Silicon Valley, the modus operandi, if you will, was, let people just start their company. And once it starts growing big, at some point in time, we'll move them aside and we'll bring in a professional CEO, right? We've learned that also doesn't work. People that are coming in from, let's say, corporates, they try to manage these companies like a corporation, and it simply doesn't have the maturity or the kind of people that want to work in a corporation to make that a success. So we've kind of learned that it's better to leave the founders in charge, but of course, then they kind of need to find a way to deal with all those new challenges that come to them. And that means being very wise about who to hire as the people below them, the people that can assist them. Often we try to make a differentiation between what we call one leader role who's the visionary, one other leader role that's more of like an integrator type of person. And that yin and yang approach works much better. Look at Mark Zuckerberg and Sheryl Sandberg at Facebook as a key example.
All the startups, though, are there any that you've gone to that's just said, this is a really bad idea, even their whole tech idea? There's got to be some that are just crappy ideas and they really shouldn't be going on. I mean, a lot of these tech companies grow up, they bubble, and the idea is gone. All those, like, what are the old, not before Facebook, those types of things. They're bad ideas. They're going to go.
I don't know if that's Roland's job to tell them that.
I know, but he'll take the money. But you have to go into these companies and say, "Oh,
I can't help.
this one, I can't help." You're going to go under no matter what I do.
Two scenarios come to mind there. The first and the far most common is that the idea never takes off, right? And that's before I come in. Even that's like when a startup never turns into a scale up, because ultimately none of us can predict if an idea is going to work. It's the market, right?
Right.
So that's the most common. What happens a lot, though, is it has taken off. They've gotten this tremendous growth, and then it starts plateauing. And because founders are almost always product people or engineers, the automatic assumption is, oh, there must be something wrong with the product.
Right,
We have to redevise the product. We have to pivot. Whereas what I find usually, it's not about the product whatsoever. It's about maybe not offering additional things like better service, or not providing enough documentation, or not being in the right channels where they can reach the mainstream customers. And so very often they start making the wrong decisions to try to get the company back on track, just like they would have done if they were still a proper startup, if you will. But it's at that stage that other levers are far more important. And so those would be the two scenarios that come to mind.
Roland, do you think you'll branch out beyond just the tech startup? And it sounds like the skill set that you have and what you're doing would be applicable across a bunch of different industries as the workplace changes. Have you thought of branching out beyond, or are you just staying pretty true to the tech startup?
I'm pretty true to the tech startup space, because I've been in 3 of these scale-ups myself, and probably the only one in the world that can tell that story 3 times in a row. However, I'm also part of a broader worldwide network of company coaches that focus on scale-ups, and so there's many of my colleagues that do focus on other industries such as hospitality, construction, consulting companies, ad agencies, and so there's a lot of us out there that can help other companies and tech companies as well.
So were you on the other side when you said you were with 3 companies? So were you on the other side then?
I was several times a CEO, but that was usually not in scale-ups. I never made it to the scale-up phase. But I was 3 times in advisory roles to CEOs, either head of product management or head of group strategy, or doing something on the finance side. And the red thread was I always found myself advising these founder CEOs of scale-up companies, what should we do next? And so at some point in time, I decided, well, maybe the universe is telling me that I should make that into my next career.
Mm-hmm. Roland, who usually invites you to start working with a startup? I'm curious. It could be the owner of the company that is smart enough to realize that they may be out of their depth, or they could use a dose of an outsider perspective. But who would you say is the most prevalent, like the most common contact for you to make to get into a company?
So definitely, if it's the founder or a very trusted ally of the founder, like it's either their chief operating officer or sometimes their chairman or a chief of staff if they have one, those are successful. Sometimes I also get leads from somebody like a VP who's just completely frustrated with the CEO and says, "Oh my God, my guy needs help. Please come in." Generally, that's not a good lead for me, because as you already implied, the person has to be ready to start making some changes themselves, right?
Yep.
So how can people contact you, or how should they find you?
Well, the easiest is just to go to my website, scaleupally.com, where there's a lot of free tools available for people.
A lot of great information on there. I did find that. I downloaded a few things, so.
Did you find them helpful?
So scaleupally.com.
Absolutely.
Great.
Absolutely.
And we'll post that on our Facebook page as well. So thanks for joining us today. We appreciate it. And thanks for spending time with us today. It sounds like you've got a pretty solid business plan there. So
it's going well.
Thank
you very much. I much appreciate the opportunity to join your show. I'm a big fan.
Oh, thank you, Roland. Thank you.
Roland.
Have a good day.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
So, Bry, so those
Yes.
were, so did you found these two companies both through, now you're a member of the NGLCC.
Right.